Alright everyone, we have new footage of the George Floyd arrest that comes from the body cam footage, and apparently this was not initially meant to be made public as part of an ongoing trial, so it is technically problematic in the evidentiary sense. I think whoever leaked it just wanted the public to know the real truth behind the George Floyd arrest because it contravenes most of what was initially said. For example, it was initially said George Floyd basically was he's driving down the road. He's high as balls, but he's acting more or less normal. He's very cooperative and respectful. He's just anxious and stuff, and the cops were being like really brusque with him, really threatening, and then they killed him. And of course it was racial, because the arresting officer was white. George Floyd is black. Therefore automatic racism, and so let's riot and destroy things. And now we've suffered billions of dollars in damages. You've got 25, 30 deaths associated with these riots. You've had countless instances of assault and lesser crimes, huge amounts of vandalism. You've had shops burned to the ground. You know, destroying, by the way, small-time jobs as well. When Wendy's burns, it isn't just, well, it's just the Wendy's franchise. They've got $100 million in insurance. It doesn't matter. There are people who work at that Wendy's, and they're not working there now are they? Managers out of work. Janitors out of work. The fry cooks are out of work. The people who deliver to the Wendy's don't have that delivery job for the next few months while they rebuild. It affects the people in the area. They can't eat at the Wendy's. They can't go there. They can't get their whatever sandwich Wendy's serves these days. Been a while. Not exactly my choice of cuisine. I generally like things that are reasonably healthy. Other than ketchup. I put that on everything. Pissing people off and getting ratioed on Twitter, by the way, as a joke in the process. But look at the body cam footage, link in the description to the YouTube video there. Assuming it's still up, I haven't bothered to check. If not, just Google it or look it up on BitChute. It's probably the better, safer version since it'll still be there tomorrow. I mean, the dude's acting erratically, number one. He's obviously high, number two. It looks like he can barely stand at times, actually. And what we're finding with the forensic report on the death is that he didn't die from asphyxiation. His heart stopped because of the massive amount of drugs he was on. I do not fully exonerate the arresting officer. The arresting officer, while he couldn't have had any idea that this dude was so doped up that his heart was about to explode, he did hold him down and did not respond when George Floyd became completely unconscious. At that point, he should have stopped kneeling on him and delivered resuscitation. A paramedic, I don't know if they were called right away at that point, but obviously they knew that the dude was high or drunk or whatever. They knew he was on narcotics of some sort or another, and that should have been taken into consideration, but they're not going to get murdered too. They're not going to be able to get murder too against this dude. The problem now is that because of Keith Ellison's overcharge that initially looked reasonable, because reasonable suspicion would be he asphyxiated. He's getting his neck leaned on by this officer. It turns out, I guess the officer wasn't applying that much force. His heart just stopped because he was on, what was it, fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana. I think there were 4 or 5 different drugs this dude was on in huge doses at the time. He shouldn't have even been breathing at that point to begin with. I mean, the dude was obviously a danger to himself and others. The fact that he was getting all anxious and was more in flight mode than fight mode really doesn't matter at that point. He wasn't cooperating with officers. He's acting erratic. He's saying weird shit. He's rambling and crying and breaking down and refusing to put his hands on the wheel, refusing to get out of the car, refusing to turn around, refusing to get on the ground. He's refusing every lawful order being issued to a person who is visibly intoxicated in a public place, providing danger to other people. There's no, if he had been white, he would have been treated the same way. That's the whole point. There was no racial motive here. They're not going to get murdered too, almost certainly. And when that happens, when the arresting officer doesn't get hit with the biggest charge, when it's lesser manslaughter or you know, something like that, or negligence, criminal negligence, aggravated criminal negligence with a deadly weapon or whatever, when they make up some phony baloney lesser charge, they're going to try to calm down, essentially. It'll be solely for the purpose of preventing another wave of riots. And it won't work, because it's not murder too. And Keith Ellison will be able to come out and grandstand and say, well, I wanted murder too, and this racist killed a black man because he's a bigot, and he's getting away with it because of right-wingers on the jury or something. And then there'll be another wave of rioting and looting, especially there, in that particular community. and it'll be a big thing, and more people will die, and billions more in damage will happen, and far leftists will rampage, and then they'll blame it on white supremacist infiltrators, like those two black dudes that carried off a safe from a business during the riots just last night. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets blamed on white supremacy too. It seems there are a lot of black white supremacists infiltrating these groups, by the way. Antifa gaslighters will literally have you believe that. It's a pile of horse shit, but that's what they keep saying. Read their own manifests. They openly call for violence, especially of this particular type. So I'm going to take them at their word on that one and assume that they're just dumb instead of that they're also liars. This is damaging for the rioters too. I mean, think of the optics. The U.S. cities burning and looting and killings at this point for more than a month, for almost 2 months now. And it's all prefaced on bullshit. The legacy media blew it out of proportion, made it a national story, international actually, whipped people into a frenzy, and now they're responsible for all of the damage. Should be CNN and MSNBC in these groups should be sued by these businesses and by these people who have lost everything. They should be sued by the families of the slain, with the idea that this is de facto defamation of the officer, their initial reporting. Oh look, here's the face of the evil bigot who killed George Floyd for racial reasons. Well, no, that didn't happen. George Floyd died technically of an overdose. He could have died of coronavirus. Did they think to swab him after he died? Did they think to do a test? I hope so, because we wouldn't want to miss a single case where a person on 10 lethal doses of fentanyl drops dead of coronavirus. We wouldn't want to miss one of those. It's very important to make sure that our facts and figures are accurate. But yeah, a daunting indictment of the legacy media, an indictment of Keith Ellison to an extent, and definitely of the Cringe Fringe rioters that have used this as an excuse for their violence. And by the way, most of them have forgotten all about George Floyd. They're not gonna. The legacy media will barely report on this new footage. CNN edited it. Did you see the reason why there's the initial link that I saw was actually CNN? It was fed to me. That one was cut down by half, selectively edited to make it look like the arresting officers were doing something wrong. This is the full version. This is the one you should actually care about. It's the one that CNN won't show its audience. Yeah, there's no propaganda there. We're not covering our asses at all for accidentally triggering billions of dollars in damage done by a bunch of emotionally crippled communists. That's about all. Peace out.